Each step deeper into the forest took her farther from Earth, and closer to the hunger beneath. Ilara didn't want to come to the forest. Not really. She told herself it was about the grant, the research, the once-in-a-lifetime chance to map an undocumented biome discovered by satellite just 2 years ago. But somewhere deep down, in the parts of her soul she didn't like to name, she knew she came because of the dreams. Dreams of roots that pulsed like veins, of trees that whispered her name with rustling mouths, of shadows shaped like hands. They called it the Sarvan Exclusion Zone now, a vast, dense green swath that had appeared in northern Finland. No record of it existed before 2023. It hadn't been there in satellite images, maps, not even in local lore. One day there was tundra. Then, 1 week later, there was forest. And no one who entered ever came back. No animals escaped its edge. No drones returned signals from its core. But Ilara had the dream. She knew the way in. She just didn't know how she knew. The trees were wrong. That was the first thing she noticed. They were too tall, too smooth, like something pretending to be trees. Their bark didn't flake or crack, it rippled, like old skin, and their branches were silent. No birds, no insects, no wind. Still, she walked. Her boots crunched on dry moss that oozed clear sap when crushed, but no trail formed behind her. She left no prints. Every step she took, the forest sealed itself behind her like a mouth closing over prey. Her GPS flickered and died 30 feet in. Her compass spun in slow circles. Yet she knew the way. Hours passed, or maybe days. Time was sick here, bending and breathing like the trees. The light above was constant, neither sun nor shade, but something else entirely, something watching. It began with whispers. Just at the edge of hearing, like her name being hummed through dead leaves, Ilara. Then came the memories. She saw her mother, who died 10 years ago, beckoning through the branches. Her childhood home stood crooked between 2 oozing trunks. Her old dog barked joyfully from somewhere ahead, but when she ran toward the sound, it turned into a low, wet growl. Still, she walked. Then the ground changed. It cracked. Split. And beneath the mossy surface, there were mouths. Real mouths. Not metaphorical or imagined. They opened in the soil like wounds, full of teeth too wide, too human. They sighed as she passed, exhaling warm, fetid air that smelled of rotting leaves and blood. Ilara. She tried to stop. She really did. But the forest didn't let her. The moment she hesitated, roots slithered up and wrapped gently, lovingly, around her ankles, urging her onward, not pulling, not dragging, just inviting. That was when she saw the hunger. Not a creature, not a thing with form or teeth. A presence. It pulsed beneath the earth like a second heartbeat. The trees were its nerves, the roots its fingers, the mouths its breath. It was ancient. It was waiting. And it was starving. She reached the center, if there could be a center in such a place. A wide clearing, circular and smooth. No trees, only grass. And beneath the grass, it. She dropped to her knees without realizing it. Her hands trembled. Her eyes wept tears of sap. Her heart beat faster, faster, then stopped. But she did not die. She left. Not in body. Her shell remained, upright and breathing. But her mind, her soul, her spark was swallowed. And the hunger sighed with satisfaction. Weeks later, another team arrived, funded and curious. They found nothing. No tents. No tracks, no Ilara. Only trees that weren't trees. And at the forest's edge, a low hum began again, like a name being whispered through the leaves. Come closer, said the forest. Come feed me. Because each step deeper took you farther from Earth. And closer to it. Part 2, the forest does not let go. The second team arrived with better equipment, military-grade drones, EM shielding, neural firewalls. They called themselves the Sarah Expedition, Special Ecological Research and Analysis. Unofficially, they were a cleanup crew. Their mission wasn't to study the Sarvan Exclusion Zone. Their mission was to seal it. Dr. Kasim Vorel led the team, former astrophysicist, a man of reason, of cold data and scientific certainty, but even he paused at the edge of the forest. I can't hear the wind, he said. They checked again. Nothing. No breeze. No birds. Not even insects. Sound itself seemed thinner here, like the air was swallowing it. Still, they entered. Ilara watched them. Not with her eyes. Of course, those had long since stopped blinking. She stood deeper in the forest now, unmoving, her mouth open in a silent screen that stretched wide, far too wide. Her eyes were black holes, her pupils pulsing slowly with the hunger's rhythm. She was the bait now. She was the invitation. The team proceeded carefully, placing motion sensors and signal repeaters every 10 meters. The devices blinked green. For the first hour, they thought the forest was quiet. Then the trees moved. Not quickly, not violently. They just shifted. One of the men, Private Mendez, looked behind him and saw only unfamiliar trees. Where the trail had been, there was now thick moss and unfamiliar thickets. The repeater he'd just placed was gone, swallowed by bark. "We're not alone," whispered Lieutenant Grant, raising her weapon. But there was nothing to shoot. Only the trees, watching. Only the roots, listening. Only the ground, breathing. They heard it next, the voice. Ilara. It echoed through their calms, through the windless air, through the bones behind their ears. Private Salim screamed and ran into the trees. They found his body later, or what was left. It had no eyes, no tongue, and his stomach had been opened from the inside. Not eaten. Emptied. Dr. Vorel pressed on. He had to. Because the readings were impossible. The forest wasn't growing on Earth. It was growing through it. The further they went, the more the laws of physics unraveled. Gravity twitched. Their watches desynced. Their own shadows moved when they didn't. The forest was a threshold, and something was pressing against it from the other side. Then they found her. Ilara. Standing still, her hands outstretched, her mouth yawning wider and wider. "She's alive," whispered someone. "No," said Vorel, shaking his head. "She's becoming." Ilara moved then, slowly, fluidly, like her joints weren't bones anymore, but vines filled with sap and whispers. And she spoke. But not in words. Her voice was a note, low and deep and endless. It rumbled through the roots, through their skulls, through the trees. The hunger heard. And it awoke. The forest split open. Not metaphorically, physically. The clearing yawned wide, roots tearing, soil parting, revealing a vast, wet throat beneath the world. Something immense stirred below, not seen, not even fully formed, but felt. The team tried to flee. 2 were taken instantly, one swallowed by a tree that opened like a lung, the other dragged screaming into a knot of roots that pulsed like intestines. Vorel dropped to his knees, trying to send one last signal through the dying equipment. "Containment. Impossible," he whispered. "The forest isn't a place. It's a door." Behind him, Ilara smiled. Her mouth cracked at the corners, wider, wider, until it reached her ears. "You should not have come," she said, voice full of dirt and ruin. And the hunger reached out. 1 week later, satellite images showed the Sarvan forest had expanded another 20 kilometers in all directions. The earth around it buckled. All attempts to enter ended in silence. And far away, in labs and observatories, data analysts began to notice strange patterns in the planet's electromagnetic field. It pulsed now, like a second heart. And deep beneath the roots, the hunger waited. Because it was no longer just in the forest. It was becoming the world. Step by step, root by root, mind by mind. And somewhere in the growing dark, Ilara whispered, "There is no earth now, only beneath." To be continued. Do you want part 3? Part 3, the world begins to forget itself. 6 months later, the Sarvan exclusion zone was no longer an anomaly, it was an expanding truth. A new continent of green-black sprawl had consumed half of Scandinavia. Towns vanished without alarm. Roads ended in moss. Satellites lost signal when passing overhead. The world government stopped sending teams. They began forgetting. Literally. Official records blurred. Maps deleted themselves. Whole populations could no longer remember what had once stood where the forest now grew. Mothers forgot missing children. Scientists forgot unfinished reports. News broadcasts skipped over the subject like a scratched record. Only a few remembered. They called themselves the Rootmarked. People like Ada Nilsson, an archivist from Oslo who remembered her brother's screams even though every document claimed she'd never had a sibling. People like Father Teja, who found strange symbols growing like fungus in his Bible margins and couldn't stop weeping when he looked at them. And people like Dr. Vorel, or the thing that wore his face. It spoke in meetings behind glass walls, advocating for containment policies that didn't exist, referencing data no one recalled collecting. His eyes were too still, his smile too dry, but no one noticed. Because Earth had already begun to change. Beneath London, subway tunnels flooded with black roots that pulsed and whispered. Travelers vanished between stations, and no one filed reports. In Tokyo, vending machines dispensed sap-covered coins instead of drinks, and those who drank from the bottles began to grow bark under their fingernails. In Mexico City, the sky above Parque Hundido darkened during daylight, and birds flew upside down until they split open, releasing seeds. And in Finland, at the bleeding center of it all, Ilara stood beneath a sky that was no longer blue. She had become the voice now. She no longer needed her mouth. The trees spoke for her. The soil dreamed her thoughts. Each new root that spread from the Servan zone carried more than spores and moss, it carried memory. It unraveled the narrative of human life like old thread, replacing it with the will of the hunger. A new history was being written. One with no humans in it. The Rootmarked tried to fight back. Ada formed a resistance, the Recall. They used ink made from burned sapwood to write truth on stone tablets, the only medium the forest couldn't erase. They built shrines of iron and old memory. They whispered names, real names, into jars and buried them deep, where roots couldn't reach. But they were losing. Because language itself was souring. The word tree no longer meant what it used to. Forest had become synonymous with home in people's dreams. Children were born with bark-colored eyes. And every night, the stars above shifted a little more. They twitched, rearranged, constellations unraveling. Because the forest wasn't just growing across the land. It was growing through time. And down into reality. In the final transmission from the Recall, Ada's voice was weak but defiant. The hunger wants a world that forgets itself. We are the story. We are the echo. If you're hearing this, remember us. Remember Earth. The signal cut off. 2 hours later, no one remembered Ada Nilsson ever existed. But beneath the forest, where the old bones of the world cracked and groaned, the hunger remembered. And it smiled. Because it was no longer becoming. It was. The world was no longer drifting away from Earth. It had already arrived. To be continued. Do you want part 4? We were never meant to dig that deep? Part 4. We were never meant to dig that deep. Before the world forgot how to resist, one last expedition went underground. Not into the forest, beneath it. The mission was called VOR9, a desperate acronym, Vault Observation and Root Eradication, funded in secret by a collapsing European Council and led by rogue scientists, priests, and those few Rootmarked who still remembered the taste of air before it turned green. Their goal wasn't to destroy the hunger. That was impossible now. Their goal was to find its anchor, the root system's origin, the seed that tore a hole through reality and let the forest bleed in. If it could be severed, they believed, the spread might stop. They were wrong. They entered through an old uranium mine in northern Sweden, one of the few sites where the hunger hadn't yet reached, or so they thought. By kilometer 3, the walls began to breathe. Not visibly, but the temperature shifted, like a mouth exhaling. The air stank of copper and wet wood. One of the men, Rios, vomited and found a seed wriggling in the bile. It blinked. By kilometer 5, they found bones. Not human, not animal, something else. Woven into the tunnel walls like rebar, wrapped in stone like they'd grown through time instead of dying in it. One femur stretched 20 meters and was hollow, like it had carried sap instead of blood. We're not beneath the forest, whispered engineer Helena Vesic. We're inside it. The others didn't understand. Not yet. Kilometer 6, something began knocking. Not close, not threatening, just there. A rhythmic pulse from deeper down, Like a heartbeat echoing through stone. The group named it the knock. It calmed them at first, gave them direction. Then came the dreams. Each of them dreamed of the same door. A circular, wooden mass knotted like a womb, pulsing in darkness, surrounded by roots that whispered in voices they loved. Mothers, lovers, children, all promising peace, all promising return. Helena was the first to dream of Elara. The woman stood at the door in her dream, smiling with her too wide mouth and honey-dripping eyes. "You were always meant to come," she said. "You were always meant to feed it." They found the door on day 7. Exactly as in their dreams. It was alive. A tangled knot of bark and sinew, beating softly, groaning with hunger. Roots fed into it like veins. Around it were the remains of a dozen other expeditions, some ancient, predating even written history. Roman coins, Norse weapons, sealed jars of sand from extinct deserts. This place had been found before. Buried again. Forgotten. Again. Because something wanted it that way. Vesic approached with the last of their shaped charges, meant to blast through rock. She pressed it to the door, fingers trembling, and whispered, "We were never meant to dig that deep. But now we know. Now we remember." She smiled. And detonated. But there was no explosion. The blast didn't echo. It disappeared, swallowed mid-flash. The sound crushed under a pressure greater than physics. The door yawned open, not in fire, but in welcoming. And something stepped through. Not Elara, not the hunger. Something older. The forest was only its dream. This was the dreamer. It had no face, no form, but those who glimpsed it went silent, their minds melted, overwritten by vines and memories that never belonged to them. One survivor, barely alive, scrawled a final message on her arm in sap-colored ink before her heart stopped. "We didn't open the door. We were already inside. Now, the hunger no longer hides. The sky is turning green in places. Oceans sprout islands of flesh wood and bone bark. The moon has stopped following its orbit. Languages are forgetting themselves. People speak, and roots fall from their mouths. There is no forest anymore. There is no earth. There is only beneath. And it is awake." To be concluded. Shall I write part 5, The Roots Go All the Way Through Me Now? Part 5, The Roots Go All the Way Through Me Now. They call it Earth still, out of habit. Old maps persist in decaying archives. Satellites orbit in silence, transmitting nothing. The world spins, yes, but not on the same axis anymore. Because the planet is hollow now. Not empty, not dead, just claimed. Every continent has been rewritten in green. Every ocean carries spores on its waves. The sky no longer shows stars, it shows veins. And somewhere in the writhing dark beneath the crust, Elara floats. Not alive. Not dead. Just rooted. Her thoughts are not her own, not anymore, but sometimes, for a moment, they almost are. On these rare flickers of identity, she remembers the sound of rain, the color of her father's coat, the taste of lemon tea. And then the roots pulse again. And she becomes the forest once more. But in her mind, something stirs. A whisper that is not the hunger, a memory that refuses to rot. It is Ada. The last of the recall. Dead, yes, but not gone. Ada's final prayer, carved into the core of a data crystal, buried in an iron coffin beneath Jerusalem, somehow survived the forgetting. And that memory, preserved in pain and love and sacrifice, has begun to rot the rot. Like a seed of defiance. Like a virus inside a god. Elara feels it. She begins to dream dreams that the hunger did not approve. She dreams of fire. Of names. Of herself. And one night, when the moons above pulse red and the ocean bleeds into the land, she opens her eyes. And moves. The forest screams. Not with words, but with loss, because for the first time in centuries, a root was cut. From the inside. Elara walks through tunnels made of ribs and time, through lungs that were once caves, through arteries of light and sorrow. She bleeds with every step. Leaves fall from her eyes, but she walks. She is no longer its voice. She is its wound. All over the world, strange things begin to happen. Children begin to draw stars again. Old songs are remembered in dreams. A well in Argentina bubbles with clean water. And the hunger, ancient, patient, endless, shudders. Because a story has restarted. Because something within it is trying to be human again. Ilara reaches the core. Not a place, a moment. A great blooming mouth of roots, all folding inward into a single point, a black bloom of origin, the seed. This is where the hunger came through. Not from space, not from hell. From inside reality. From the dark place behind thought. From what's underneath everything. She kneels before it. She whispers a name. Her name. The seed pulses in confusion. Because it remembers her. And for the first time in all its vast, eternal consumption, the hunger hesitates. The world watches, but not with eyes. The skies ripple. The oceans pause. Billions of vines stop growing. And then, fire. Real fire. Human fire. From somewhere forgotten, from some place untouched, a match is lit. And the world breathes in. And burns. In the aftermath, no one remembers what the world was. Not exactly, not clearly. But trees grow normally again. Rain falls cold and blue. Children ask questions. Maps hold still. And in a small clearing in what was once Finland, a woman sleeps beneath a tree that bears no fruit and no hunger. Only hope. And on her bark-lined skin, the words grow slowly, carved by light. The roots go all the way through me now. But I chose what they grow. The end. Would you like an epilogue or a connected short story from this universe? Epilogue, what the earth remembers. They say the world healed. They're wrong. The forest burned. Yes, but not all of it. The seed cracked, but did not die. Because the hunger was never just a parasite. It was a mirror. A reflection of what grew beneath the surface of us. And though Ilara chose to burn it, chose hope, chose fire, the world she saved is not the world that was. It is something new. Something half-remembered. Something, watching. In the decades that follow, humanity rebuilds. Cities rise again, stitched from steel and memory. Languages are relearned. Laws are rewritten. People believe they've broken the cycle. But every so often, a child is born with eyes the color of sap. Or someone dreams of a door that shouldn't exist. And in the deepest part of the world, beneath all oceans, all time, all light, something still pulses. Slower now. Quieter. Waiting. There's a man named Jonas Wren who keeps a journal. He lives alone on the edge of the rewilded zone they used to call Servan. He writes every night by candlelight in a house made of bone-pale trees that never rot. He doesn't remember where he came from. No one does. But he remembers this. I heard a voice today, from the trees. It wasn't Ilara. It was something older. It asked me if I remembered how to forget. And I said yes. He has roots growing through his basement floor. He waters them every morning. And when asked why, he only smiles and says, not all seeds die, some just wait for softer soil. And so the earth spins on. Haunted not by ghosts, but by roots. And the memory of a hunger that was never truly banished. Only buried. The end, for now. Would you like a stand-alone story set in this universe, perhaps from the perspective of one of the root-marked children? Or a prequel showing how the hunger first arrived? Stand-alone story in the Hunger universe. The girl who could hear the roots speak. Her name was Mara. She was 8 when the trees began talking to her. Not like in stories, no voices on the wind, no songs in the leaves. The roots whispered through her feet. Tiny pulses of memory traveled up her bones whenever she stood barefoot on the ground. At first, it was nonsense, a bird's final thought. The sound of rainfall 10,000 years ago. A scream trapped in amber. But over time, the whispers formed sentences. And the roots remembered everything. Mara lived in one of the resettlement arcs, clean cities built far from the burnt zones, where the old forest had once reigned. No one spoke of Servan anymore. History had been rewritten with tidy names like the Great Growth and the Ilara event. They said the hunger was gone. They said the world was safe. They lied. Because Mara's dreams were filled with impossible forests, their trunks made of faces, their branches bearing fruit shaped like hearts, And always, beneath her feet, the slow, steady beat of something alive. She told her teacher once. Said the roots remembered the war, the forest, the fire. Said the ground wept when no one was watching. Her teacher smiled politely and scheduled a scan. They found neural sap entanglement in her brain, a new condition, rare, isolated, dangerous. They marked her as a soil sensitive. They tried to medicate the forest out of her. It didn't work. Because the hunger wasn't gone. It had just learned patience. And Mara was its first seed in this new soil. One day, Mara walked into the central garden of the Ark barefoot and placed both hands on the dirt. Her lips moved. No one heard the words. But the trees around her twitched, just slightly, just once. That night, every child in the Ark dreamed the same dream. They were standing in an endless forest. The sky was a soft green. A woman stood beneath a black tree with silver leaves. She looked like a child, and she smiled with bark-lined teeth. "I am the memory," she said. "I am the next beginning." Mara vanished the next morning. No alarms were triggered. No footprints led away. She was simply gone, like a leaf dissolving in sunlight. Years later, in a garden built over the ruins of the old forest, a new tree sprouted. No one planted it. It grew fast, unnaturally fast. Its bark was smooth and white, its leaves pulsed with veins that glowed faintly in the dark, and beneath it, if you stood long enough with bare feet on the soil, you could hear it too. I remember. The hunger was not evil. It was just lonely. And now, it had a daughter. The end. Want a prequel next, showing the first time the seed tried to break through? Long before Alara? Maybe even before humans?